So here we are, being in the middle of COVID-19 and social distancing the expectation together as a community to not just distract, but to learn, communicate, and most importantly, listen to three renowned storytellers of our times. So welcome to the first edition of Writers Talk. And today we have Dr. Kishore Ram in conversation with three debut writers, Mr. Abdullah Khan, the writer of Patna Blues, Mr. Sabin Iqbal, the writer of Cliffhangers, and Mr. Kishore Guha, the writer of Accidental Magic. So let's have a little introduction of who these eminent personalities are. So Abdullah Khan is a banker by profession and he's from Patna, and now he's settled in Mumbai where he's the vice president of Axis Bank. Kishore Guha is an editor with Juggernaut Publishers and is settled in Dubai. Delhi. And Mr. Sabin Iqbal is a senior journalist and the director of the Madhubhumi Literature Festival, and he is settled in Trivandrum. So we also have Mr. Sidhartha Banerjee, who represents the Writers' Talk, and is the vice president of HSBC Bank, and he is settled in London. And the host today, we have Dr. Kishore Ram. He is the head, Department of English, MMNSS College, Kottayam. And we also have Dr. Deena, the principal of MMNSS College, Kottayam. And I welcome all of you, the participants and panelists, to the session. So without further ado, we'll start. And I welcome Dr. S. Beena, the principal, for the principal address.
Thank you. Good evening to all. Respected HOD Kishore Ram, our today's chief guest, Sri Sabin Iqbal, Abdullah Khan, and Kishore Guha, participants from different institutions, my colleagues, and my dear students. Today we have a very important event. The Department of English, in association with Writers' Talk, is conducting a web chat event. Kishore Ram, the head of the Department of English, is talking to contemporary writers Sabin Iqbal, Abdullah Khan, and Keshava Guha. I wish all success to the event. I am sure that this session will encourage the young and aspiring writers in the audience to know what it is to write in the contemporary scenario. I congratulate the Department of English for organizing such an interesting webinar. I thank the Writers' Talk for joining hand with us. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now it's time for our discussion. Over to you, Dr. Kishore.
I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay, so we have three interesting writers with us. Actually, four. Sabin Iqbal, Abdullah Khan, Keshav Guha. Keshav, are you there? I can't see. Yes, okay. And Sidhartha Banerjee from the Writers' Talk. As mentioned by Arya, Abdullah Khan is a banker by profession, and it took him nearly 20 years to get his book published, so a long struggle. Okay, and lots of rejections, and he has lots to tell. Then Keshava Guha is there, his first book, Accidental Magics. Okay, and he is from Bangalore, but now he's settled in Delhi, working as an editor in a publishing firm. Then we have Sabin Iqbal from Varkala, quite nearby place to Kottayam, and his novel Cliffhangers came out last year, and he is a senior journalist. He was in Dubai in Gulf, and now he is the director of the Madhubhumi Lit Fest. And also joining is Sidhartha Banerjee, another very good writer. He has not yet published, but he has published lots of short stories, and his story was read out by an actor in London Liars League. Okay, so that's it. So we'll begin the session. Siddharth, are you there? Siddharth.
Yes. I just muted myself. Yes,
okay.
Thanks.
It will be good if you all switch on your videos, because we are having a recording going on. So it will be good to have the video on. Okay, so to begin with, we'll just start with some general questions. This is the pattern that we are going to follow. We'll ask one or two general questions, and followed by that, there will be a reading session, starting with Sabin, followed by Abdullah Khan, then Keshava. And after that, I will ask questions based on your novel, starting with Keshava, followed by Sabin, and finally Abdullah Khan. Okay, and then we'll have some concluding questions from Sidhartha Banerjee. And finally, we'll open the, we'll invite one or two from the participants so that they can interact with the writers. And finally, we'll have a session open for the participants. And there's a big offer that if you ask very good questions, the writers will send their autographed books to you directly. So that is good. So prepare, listen to the talk and prepare the kind of questions that you want to ask. Okay, to begin with, I'll ask just one general question. We'll begin with a general question. What was your original manuscript like? How many words and how much did you delete? So I'll begin with Sabin.
Oh, mine was more or less the same. It's a small book. Thank you for having me. First of all, thank you for having me. I haven't got much. I mean, actually, I'm there. I can't see anybody. Yeah. Okay.
The back.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. It's a small book. It's a 117-page book. You know, you can read it in a jiffy. So not much cutting, but then there's a little bit of editing. We tweak here and there. Shift chapters. That has happened. So basically the book is more or less in the same shape. So I'm happy. I mean, Keshava will be knowing more about editing and deleting from my yeah.
Okay, Keshava.
So, my book is, the length didn't change much. So it's about 80,000, but it looks slimmer than it is. I mean, it's quite long, physically long. It's about 80,000 words. And even my first draft was about 80,000 words, but the final 80,000 words is quite different from the first 80,000. A lot of things were cut, a lot of things were added. My book has 4 main characters. And in the first draft, it only had, there were 3 of them were main characters. And then people who read the book said this 4th person, Malti, should also become a main character. So some of those changes happened. And actually from the time I finished the first draft, the time the book came out was a span of about 3 years. Revising the book, signing with an agent, which took some time. All of those things. So I mean, Abdullah of course is a very interesting story, but I think for most people. Actually, it's quite a long journey from when you first think you've written a book to when the book actually comes out.
Abdullah?
Yeah.
Your audio is not clear.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me?
No.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Tell me.
Feeble, but you can.
Feeble.
Just speak, Abdullah, just speak up a little bit.
Okay. So, my story is a very long story. So, when I finished my novel in 2009, it was around 125,000 words. So, hello?
Yeah, Karen.
Yeah, Karen.
So
It's not that audible, but okay. Can you keep the mic a bit closer?
So it was around 125,000 words long, and it was written from the 2 characters' point of view. So it was a bit longer, and I was sending out to the many agents, many editors, mostly outside India. So I used to get the feedback. Some agents were very kind, big guy and a very generous. So they offered me the suggestion to make changes, and I made changes. In the course of time, one character is totally deleted, and now it is from the one point of view. And when I submitted to Jagannath books, it was around 100,000 something, 100,005. So first task given by the Jagannath books was to make it 60,000. So I was just scared. How can I do that? So finally it is around 73,000. So I am happy that Wikipedia and Renu made me delete so many things. So I have no complaints. So now it is 73,000. So I started at 125,000 and finally published book is 23,000.
Okay, Abdullah, it will be good if you can keep the mouthpiece a bit more closer so that it will be clear, like what I am doing.
Hello.
Yeah, okay. So now, what about the title? You have given very good titles: Cliffhangers, Patna Blue, and
Actually, title has its own journey. When I started writing, I was just into my 20s, and at time I was supposed to write some mushy romance, a lot of love scenes and romantic descriptions. So that time, the title of the book was "In the Corner of a Heart." So it
Oh.
was kind of a romantic story. then title changed to "The Four Corners of a Heart," and then I gave this story a kind of philosophical touch, and the title was the Sacred Tree or Holy Tree, something like that. A tree was the one of the main characters. But then three kinds of dreams, so, including Kishore Ram and Sidhartha, they are the part of our group. We discussed writing with each other, and my wife was very critical of the title. This is not a good title. So suddenly someday it came out of the group. Why should not I use the name of the book? Patna comes blues, and after changing the title, I sent it to the people, sir. One to David and one to Chief. So title was very lucky. The title I got, immediately got that.
Abdullah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, but your audio is not clear. Keep this bit closer. Yeah, okay. Now we'll come to Keshav. Accidental Magics. Magic.
Yeah.
Good title.
So I'll come out and say, I'm still not happy with the title. I actually think the title was a mistake.
Oh.
And I'll tell you about it. It was a working title. Often you have a title that you say until I think of it. You don't want to. In your head, it's difficult to be working on a book and not have some name for that book. So it was a working title, and I always thought, if I get an agent, if I get a publisher, they'll tell me they'll come up with some better title. So when the book was signed by HarperCollins, I said to them, can you give me a better title? And they said, no, we like this title. So we ended up just sticking with it. But it turned out, the problem is because my book deals with Harry Potter fans, and because there's magic in the title, readers expect magic in the book. And I think, and of course, the book is quite a dark, serious book. It's not it's not fantasy at all. So I think that actually the title misleads the reader a little bit. And if I could do it over, I would come up with a new title. The thing is, I've never been able to come up with a different title.
Okay, Sabin.
Okay.
Cliffhangers.
Yeah, my book. The Cliffhangers is based in and around Varkala. Basically, it's at the cliff, the popular tourist destination cliff. So the four boys, who make a gang, they're called the Cliffhangers. The gang is called the Cliffhangers. So, but my original title was a brief history of the Cliffhangers and Grass Widows. So, but then I think David and my editors, they thought it's too long a title for such a small book. So they thought the Cliffhangers has got more impact. So I went by their choice. So that's the story. But the Cliffhangers is the gang's name.
Okay.
Those four boys who hang around, the cliff. So, yeah.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
the story.
Sidharth, please ask.
Yes, no. When Keshava was saying there's no magic in the book, I was just thinking, isn't every book a magic in itself? Even I mean, the fact that somebody has written it and gone through the pains and pleasure of writing a book. I think every book is a magic in itself, isn't it?
I don't know about that, Sidhartha. I think there are some books I wish had not been written personally. But
Well, I tend to agree with you on that. Yeah.
Okay, Siddharth, your question, please.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking. I think I have a question for Sabine.
Yeah.
And so when we think of fiction, Sabine, and I think it's also because you're a journalist, you straddle the world of both fiction and non-fiction. How do we think about literature that can impact or make a change to society? How do you think of books which has in some way shaped society, and where do we draw the line between great works of fiction like To Kill a Mockingbird or Toni Morrison's Beloved versus propaganda literature? So where do we draw that line?
No, I'll start with mine and then we'll get on to the second part of the question. See, I'm a journalist fundamentally and professionally by conditioning and by training. I'm a journalist. So in this small book, you can see the events that that have happened in Kerala over a period of some years. So as a writer, as a fiction writer, what I do is that I use these events, real life events, and exaggerate them or string them together, put them together in a book form. So this book is particularly is a reflection of the contemporary society. It touches upon the communal tension, fault lines, and all that in a fictitious manner. But then a person who knows Kerala, who observes Kerala keenly, easily pick out these incidents, say this is what happened. I'm not saying this not happened. It's happened, but then I'm in the habit of exaggerating things. Fictionalizing facts and all that. That I love that. I love fictionalizing facts. Since I collect events, I collect news. I have a folder to save all those things, and which I can go back and use later on. So that's one. Second, I don't think books can revolutionize or change the society. You can just point. It's like poets and writers are like birds who call up from some secret box and say this is not right. What the society is doing not right. I don't think we can bring about a bloody revolutions in that form. But we do have a responsibility. We get restless to respond. As a writer, I feel the compulsion to respond to a certain thing. So. And I don't also believe in as you said, propaganda literature, because literature is literature. If it is, so you can take it and you can leave it. As Keshava rightly said, we wish that some books were not written. I wish Cliffhanger was not one of them. But then this is what, because for nearly 20 years I've been trained and conditioned as a journalist. So my eyes are focused or trained to pick these events and keep them. And now when I start writing, these events come up, and take form. I exaggerate.
Yeah.
I love exaggerating. Tell lies.
Yeah. That's a very good point you've made, Sabine. I think it's that blending of facts and fiction, isn't it? And I remember, someone said that in this time where a lot of truth is being changed, I think fiction has a greater role to talk about truth in its own fictional way. So that's why I think because of your journalistic work, it has a kind of a blended form between how you assimilate fact and use that for your fiction.
I also believe that fiction and stories have a therapeutical, effect. They heal wounds, in some form by telling us stories and open some doors for us to see things, imagine world in a different way. Take us to a different culture. So fiction for me it's very important, as important as facts are. So.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have one more question, Kishore, or you
Yeah,
want
yeah,
to
you can ask. You can
go
ask.
to the readings?
Some
All right.
participants
So
are finding
this
it.
one is
Okay, sorry. Some participants are finding it difficult to enter, so I'm trying to help them. Siddharth, take over.
all right.
Okay.
All right. So I have one for Keshava. Given your role as a writer and as well as a publisher,
Yeah.
I'm just curious to understand about the diverse voices in literature and where do we stand? Because if you look at the history of novel in some parts of the world, there has been an increasing inclination towards diversity.
Yeah.
Took about 100 years from Robinson Crusoe to have the first women writers, then the black voices,
Yeah.
writers from the colonies. Where do you see Indian writing? Is it on the brink of a similar transformative journey, or where do you
Yeah.
see that?
So it's a great question, and before I was an editor, I was a critic, so I've had to grapple with this from different angles. There's no question that okay. So in the context of, let me talk about the context of Indian literature. There are two related journeys of diversity or diversification that are ongoing. So the first is to displace the dominance of metropolitan English-speaking literature. So if you go back to the year 1997, many of the older people here will know, but the younger students won't know about this. Salman Rushdie and his then wife produced an anthology of Indian writing
Yes.
called Mirror Work. And in that book, there were 15 or 16 selections. There was only one selection from Manto that was not English. There was a translation. And in the introduction, Salman Rushdie famously and notoriously said, "Oh, this is the reason I've done this is all the best writing in India."
Yeah. Absolutely. I remember that. Yeah.
So on that, Siddhartha, we've come a long way since 1997. So today, as an editor, most of the writers I work with are people who write in Indian languages. Benjamin, Perumal Murugan, Gyan Chaturvedi, Anita Agnihotri. These are my writers as the juggernauts that I work with. And then there are people that I don't work with, but that that all of you would have read, like Vivek Shanbag from Kerala, K.R. Meera. And these people have become household names. And frankly, if you look at the last 10 years, the literary fiction that has done well, that has made an impact, has mostly been translations from Indian languages into English. So in that sense, I think that there's been a real improvement. And 80 to 90% of the interesting literature in India is not written in English, right? There is good literature in English, but that's a small percentage. So we're doing a better job at translating writing from other languages into English. Where I think we have much further to go is in the most discriminated, marginalized communities in India, who are in no order, Dalits, Adivasis, Muslims, and of course women within all those communities. They remain very underrepresented in terms of what is published. There's some small improvement, and look, we're always looking. As publishers, we are committed to this, but I would say in terms of diversity of languages, we've done better. Diversity of representing marginalized communities, we have a long way to go.
Can I just add that? Can I just add to that? To that.
Sure, absolutely.
What I there was a time, there was a period when Indian writing in English was like looking up down, kind of thing. So Oxbridge tales and all that. But then our flavor has changed. Now we are writing. Maybe we are writing in English, but we are writing about villages, village stories, village life, with stories with the smell of the soil. So there is a complete a change, is a departure, from the metros and the so-called. You got what I mean. So, but then now writers. I mean, for example, this book is completely about village life. I happen to write it in English. The characters are typically from Varkala. I take Abdullah's book in Patna Blues. That it's a story of the small town boy coming up to the city, and writers like Manu Bhattacharya's book, the town that laughed. It's all about common people. So there is a shift in that term. That these are not metro stories, and I don't on a personal note, I don't find any fault in metro stories and village stories, but the fact that not only in translations that but in good English writing, we are getting to read village stories, so the people from the subaltern or the marginalized lands. So that's what I feel.
Yeah. Abdullah, your thoughts on that?
I agree with Sabine and some new voices are coming from the marginalized class, but still it's long way to go. You find a few names from marginalized community, or the Dalit community, or the other suppressed class, especially the women from these marginalized communities are not finding their voice.
Yeah.
And this is to be has to be addressed at the institutional level, without just waiting for the right time or right moment that they will come up. We have to think of it, and as far as the stories from the small towns are concerned, true. Now, for example, I am typically writing about a Bihari village in 90s. It is more like many people are commenting it is a Hindi novel written in English. So it is more close to the Premchand or the of Venu than any of the contemporary English writers. So things are changing. We hope many more voices. So I keep encouraging from especially the writers from aspiring writers from the small towns, the small villages. If they get in touch, I always encourage them. Instead of running after the like a published author, you should tell your own story. So that is a good change. Hope in the coming years, and we have a publisher, Guha, so we hope they will also be doing hits to the time.
Yeah. Of course, and in that way, we kind of keep changing the language itself, the fabric of narratives and language itself, isn't it? We make it more broad-based, democratic. We find new words in the language itself. Language of English in the 1940s vis-a-vis what we have now is significantly changed. So, yeah. Kishore, what's your view on that from an academic perspective?
Of course, we find that nowadays we find the regional languages being given much importance nowadays. Maybe it's there was a period when people thought whether Indians have a way of thinking. Whether we had a way of expressing ourselves, but now we find that we are not any longer following the.
A bit louder, Kishore.
You can't hear? Okay. So we are no longer following or trying to imitate anybody, but we are sticking to our own language, our own. For example, in Sabin's book, we find local words used. Arundhati Roy has used Malayalam in her writing. So we find that nowadays we shift to regional representation or regional writings nowadays. So that is a very good thing.
And the writers don't feel it necessary to explain. So if you look at Amit Chaudhary's books, for example, he keeps the language as it is rather than trying to explain it for an international audience. So I think that also is a significant change, a sort of.
Yes.
Right.
So we now shall we have the reading session? Sabin?
I just wanted to add something. Sidharth, actually, if you are writing in a way that the context is clear, then people make it. They can actually, because my experience with the various translators, especially Arabic translators or Persian translators, so they are able to guess. They used to message me or call me whether this words means this. So they are able to guess what this word, and get the readers also do some hard work. If they want to test some story, for example, go outside India and we try some new food, so we have to, if it is more spicy or different taste, we have to deal with it. So they should deal with it. Okay. Okay, Kishore, go ahead.
Okay, now Sabin, please read from your novel.
I mean, 2 para, 3 para.
You have 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Okay. All right. Okay. I'm going to read from. I'm going to read about. Since I spoke about village characters, I'm going to read a couple of paragraphs from. There is a witchcraft incident. So, there is. So I'm going to read 4 paragraphs. Okay. Right, here we go. In a village with such volatile communal tensions, even the crows turn villains. One morning, Vilasini Amma, a middle-aged woman who lives near the temple, saw through the kitchen window a distorted bullseye staring at her from her backyard. She screamed and ran out of her kitchen, waking up the whole neighborhood. Ayo! Ayyo! She screamed at the top of her voice, dropping the steel jar she was washing. She ran around the house, startling her convalescing husband and jolting her old, bedridden mother. The men from the neighboring houses thought the old woman had passed away. Contrary to Vilasini Amma's claims of black magic, they soon found out that the bull's eye was no witchcraft nor any evil eye, but a severed buffalo eye from Muni's shop, which is a butchery, by the way. Vilasini Amma believed that one of the neighbors had cast a spell on her family. Last month, she had accidentally dug out a small earthen pot containing a bronze piece, knotted black thread, and a severed head of a cock. Her husband fell sick the following week, and her son lost a job in the Gulf. Ever since, she's been anticipating another spell of black magic from her neighbors. Vicious people, they're jealous of my son's wealth, she told her relatives. When she saw the awkwardly positioned bloody eye of a bull staring at her from the backyard, she was sure that it was another attempt to create trouble in her home. A crow had rummaged the plastic sack containing offal and fat waste kept in the shed at the back of Muni's shop and had flown away with the eye before anyone spotted it. With the eye tucked in its beak, and the crow flew over the houses and trees, heading towards its nest with 3 hungry chicks on a coconut tree. As it flew over the temple, the eye slipped off its beak and fell to the ground. The crow swooped down to pick it up, but the eye landed on Vilasini Amma's yard right in front of her door, which lay its eyes closed. The crow would have picked it up and flown away, avoiding any communal tension, but for the dog, which opened its eyes and started barking. In the evening, a few men gave a written complaint to S.I. Devan, explaining the entire incident and making a request to shut down the butchery. S.I. Devan pressed his hands together, rubbed his fat cheeks, and thought deeply. He knew it was a delicate matter. Let me study the case, he told them, and sent them off with a request not to do anything. To pacify the complainants, he went to Vilasini Amma's house. He knew the villain in this case was the crow. With hands in his pockets, he sniffed around like a hound. He then looked up and saw a crow perched on the branch of a mango tree. There, the villain. He pointed at the crow. The men around him looked up and saw the crow, and looked at the inspector, and then at each other, trying hard not to laugh. We cannot arrest the crow, obviously, he said, rolling his latte. But I will speak to him, he said, and left to meet Munir. When S.I. Devan arrived at the shop, Munir was shaving off flakes of meat from the thigh bone of a buck slaughtered that morning. As he sharpened his knife against a piece of iron placed next to the butcher's block. S.I. Devan had gone through Munir's file at the time of taking charge of the station. He had a fair idea about Munir's criminal history. Fear begets respect, at least in S.I. Devan's case. He cleared his throat, and Munir looked up from the long, heavy bone. Munir, do you have a minute? S.I. Devan asked. Munir placed the knife on the block, wiped his hands on the blood-smeared towel tied around his hip, and said, "Always for you, sir."
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, Abdullah.
So I'm going to read from chapter 5. So it's about.
Your audio is not that clear.
Abdullah, just hold the mic closer, yeah.
Are you able to hear me?
No, it's not clear. Just hold it up.
Hello?
It's not that clear.
Hello?
Hold it like this.
Hello?
Okay.
Hello?
Okay, carry on.
So this is from chapter 5. So it is about the main protagonist's moral dilemma. On the wind-swept and moonlit banks of the Ganga, Sumitra, dressed in black, her head covered with the pallu of her sari, beckoned him. The pallu then slipped to reveal her hair, which shone as if it was made of metal. something fell into the water. Arif tore his eyes away from Sumitra and saw Zakir drowning. He ran towards the river, but heard Sumitra singing a melancholy song. He could not understand the lyrics, but the melody was compelling. Sumitra was now in front of him. She was wearing a sleeveless evening gown, which revealed her effortless. His desire began to uncoil inside him. His brother screamed, but he could not move. He pulled Sumitra into his arms and kissed her passionately, leaving his brother to die. Toba Astaghfar, Toba Astaghfar. Arif woke up with a start. He sat up, unsettled, his feet tentatively touching the floor, feeling its indifference. Arif could hear his voice, his brother sitting by his side. Still to reassure himself, he turned on the light and checked on Zakir. He seemed to be deep in sleep. Right next to him on the bed they shared, his left foot dangling out of mattress. Bending, Arif gently lifted his brother's leg and placed it back on the bed and affectionately ran his fingers through his hair. On the windowsill were a fat penguin plastic paper bag of Anna Karenina and a jug of water. He took a swig directly from the jug and picked up the novel, but then placed it back without opening it. Getting back into bed, he tried to sleep, but he still felt disconcerted. Was it just a nightmare, or was it something else? Did not his grandma once mention something about varieties of dreams? There are three types of dreams. She had said, celestial dreams or Sabe Rahmani are from God, which give insight into future events. Sabe Shaitani, satanic dreams are dirty dreams and nightmares. And psychological dreams or the Sabe Zehani are reflections of what you think about deeply when you are awake. Arif wondered if this had been a satanic dream, or was it a portent of some future calamity, or was it a divine warning to keep away from Sumitra? He closed his eyes and started reciting from the Surah Al-Baqarah and slowly drifted off to sleep.
Thank you, Abdullah. Keshav?
Thanks, Kishore. Okay, so I'm going to read a brief passage from. I think this is also this is also chapter 5 of my book, like it is of like Abdullah's reading. And this is the main protagonist of this book, a young man called Kannan, who's a software engineer in the U.S. He has his parents are trying to arrange his marriage, so he and the bride have been asked to meet. The prospective bride wants to meet him one-on-one, so they go for a walk in Cubbon Park in Bangalore. If any of you know Bangalore, you know Cubbon Park. Okay. The girl was a little over 5 feet, in between short and average, but she stood and walked with a short person's determined uprightness. In America, she might have worn stilettos. She wore a turmeric salwar kameez with a dupatta of a slightly brighter yellow. The effect was, if not exactly plain, then certainly less than he expected of someone dressing to impress a potential husband. It had been impressed upon him that he was not a suitor. This was not a swayamvar. It was up to him and to his parents to proceed with the match. Whether the girl saw things this way was uncertain, especially as her face and eyes seemed impenetrably calm. Her shoulders were even, her nose narrow, but it was all set a little too close together. You couldn't, by any standards strict enough to be meaningful, call her pretty. She was just short and pretty. But even a girl of unremarkable near prettiness was sure to have been catcalled, to have received notes from boys from other colleges, to have been told she was beautiful. Kannan had never received any sort of approach, nor even a compliment. Along with everything else, his brother Santanam had been granted a complexion the shade of a Parle-G biscuit, while Kannan's was Cadbury Dairy Milk. The girl was darker than Santanam, but distinctly fairer than Kannan. They entered Cubbon Park, moving past the statue of Queen Victoria towards the red oxide monuments of colonial Bangalore. Kannan made no attempt to play guide. He had been to Coven Park as a boy, had ridden the toy train on a school outing, but he knew nothing beyond the fact they would eventually come to the high court, a building he was certain no member of his family had ever entered. She was silent because she had the woman's privilege of not having to initiate conversation. Kannan had spent the first hours of the morning not planning this meeting, but visualizing it. He was sure he would think only of what she might be thinking of him. But as they walked, he found his mind blank. Not out of anxiety or nervousness, but of mere inactivity. He neither thought nor attempted to think. Was conversation even expected of him? By their request, the girl and her father had placed him in a zone where expectations, for once, were ambiguous, or at least undefined. Other than a certainty that it would be inappropriate for him to touch her, an urge that in any case he did not feel, he might even be free of expectation, but that might be even worse than its familiar encumbrance.
Thank you, Kishore.
It's a little short of 3 minutes, so...
Okay,
yeah.
so now we will start discussing fiction, your works. So I'll start with Keshava, then Sabin, and finally Abdullah. Okay, Keshava, accidental magic.
Yeah.
So central character Kannan, a young Indian computer programmer from Bangalore, living the
Yeah.
glorious American dream. Then Grimmett, is it Grimmett? Pronunciation is right?
Grimmett. Curtis Grimmett, that's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
Grimmett, a significantly older Anglophile who runs the Lonely Heart program. Okay, Rebecca, a bright young girl, fresh out of college and working an ordinary job. And Maladi, a Chennai native who is a fan of Harry Potter and goes to Boston after marrying Kannan. Okay. So they find their paths crossing in Boston due to their common love for Harry Potter.
That's right.
Okay. So, and first question is that I have noticed that being alone or loneliness is something haunting in the novel.
Yeah, that's right.
The characters, excluding when they are together for coffee chats or at meetings, are lonely. And they have their own inner traumas and conflicts to deal with.
Yeah, that's right.
Is this because it is a novel dealing with issues of immigrants, and loneliness is something an immigrant has to confront all the time? And Harry Potter is in a way a solution to the loneliness of these immigrants. And you have pictured loneliness of immigrants in a beautiful way. What are you to say about the observation that loneliness is what brought these characters together?
Yes, you're absolutely right. I think you've absolutely got at the heart of the book, so to speak. All I would say is that in the case of Grimmett, he was not an immigrant. He has a different kind of loneliness. And I actually don't want to say too much about that because in his case, I really want to leave it to the reader to try to have their own interpretation of, I think in Kannan's case, it's very clear that it is a part of it is the loneliness of the immigrant. The thing about Kannan is that Kannan was unhappy where he came from. Malti was happy where she came from. Malti loves her father. She has a close relationship with a strong family relationship in that sense. Kannan does not. So when Kannan first arrives in America, he actually enjoys being alone. He says, finally, I have got my personal space. But after a while, that becomes loneliness, which is how he forms this very unlikely friendship with this much older American man. But yes, the book is absolutely about people who are alone and the kinds of places that loneliness can lead you to. So whether it's an unlikely friendship or whether it's, remember the book is about grown-ups who become obsessed with Harry Potter. So it's not about children. All children love Harry Potter, right? So, but why a grown-up can love Harry Potter, but why would a grown-up dedicate their entire life and attention to Harry Potter fandom? Because they're very lonely. Yes.
Okay, now coming to Kannan and Grimmett. Okay, regarding the dubious friendship. And while reading, I found myself wondering how to place their relationship, whether it was like a son-father relationship or a gay relationship or mere friendship. Did you think about how you have developed this relationship between a 20-year-old youth and a middle-aged person who is just 5 years younger to his father? Am I right? 5 years younger to Kannan's father?
Yes, that's right. So Grimmett is, that's right. Grimmett is only 5 years younger than Kannan's father. That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so is friendship or can friendship be called another central theme of the novel or the central theme of the novel? Is that right?
Absolutely. I think friendship is a very important theme of the novel, and it's in a couple of different ways. So the first is so simply, what is friendship? Is everybody capable of friendship? A question that I have about Kannan is Kannan capable of friendship? I don't know. True friendship. I think I'm someone. It's I'm obviously younger than Abdullah and Sabin. I'm not married. I don't have children, etc. So actually, if I think about my human relationships, apart from family, friendships are the central relationships, right? And the other thing about my own life is that I have a lot of friends who are much older than me, in some cases decades older than me, close friends, right? So that's something I'm interested in, friendship across generations. But the other thing about the book, and you having read the book will know that towards the end of the book, and I'm not ruining the plot here, there's a philosophical dilemma, which is, what do you do when you feel like your friend has behaved in a very unethical way? Is the right thing to do to stand by your friend, or do you break off with your friend because you now have contempt for him as a human being? And so one of the characters in the book confronts this dilemma, and that was that fiction as a tool to explore moral and philosophical dilemmas is something that really appeals to me. And friendship, I feel like there are a lot of books about romance, but friendship is a less explored subject, maybe, especially adult friendship. So that was something. Yeah, definitely, it's a very important theme of the book.
Okay, and now coming to there is some element of racism in your novel. Okay, Rebecca seems to be irritated by the comment passed by teacher fellow Laurent Camney that her skin was white but her heart was black. She understands that Laurent from Cameroon did his PhD on Frantz Fanon, the author of Black Skin and White Mask. Then there is another episode where Annabelle points out that Harry Potter asked only two girls out, Cho Chang and Parvati Patel. She says that at Harvard, the girls did not like a British guy falling for Asian girls and termed it as yellow fever. So you have addressed both the reverse racism and color consciousness in your novel. What prompted you to include these in your novel?
So, it's funny because things change so quickly. When I studied in America, I studied at Harvard, the same university that Rebecca attends. And I was there about 10, 12 years ago. And it was a very different time. Barack Obama had just been elected the president. There was a lot of optimism about race relations. And I noticed a lot of subtle, small aspects of lingering racism. But the interesting thing is today, a lot of the things that the characters say or do would not be considered acceptable. They were totally normal 10 or 20 years ago. If I look at the generation of people about a little younger than me, who are maybe 10 years younger than me, who are students today, they have zero tolerance for racism. And they have very sharp antennae for, so for example, right? So when I was a student about 10 years ago, it was absolutely normal. If a white man was dating a Chinese or Korean or Japanese girl, other people would say he has yellow fever, right? That was a commonly used phrase. That phrase would not be used today in an American college campus, or if you used it, you would use it very quietly. The norms of polite speech have changed. But the book is set 20 years ago when, of course, people were much more, I haven't really gotten into this in the book, but 20 years ago in America, casual homophobia was completely normal. And today it's completely unacceptable in the kinds of places that, I'm writing about. So I was trying to capture a flavor of a time when that kind of casual, subtle racism was much more in the air.
Your novel has some fan fiction elements, and in a way it can be misunderstood as a fan fiction.
That's right.
I was constantly reminded of 2666 of Roberto Bolaño, in which four literary critics, Morini, Espinosa, Voltaire, and Norton, are connected by
That's
their
right.
common interest in German novelist Benno von
Archipelago. Yeah.
Archipelago. Okay, and in your novel, you say about the conflicts between fans of Harry Potter fictions and how
Yeah.
Eden Alice is accused of plagiarism, and Grimmett says it is
Yeah.
the end of fandom. Do you think that fan fictions are extensions of the real plot written by the real writers and written by fans who are dissatisfied by the ending of the novel or what happened in the novel,
Yeah.
and in a way provide satisfaction to the writer, fan, and reader fans that they have sought out the ending in a different manner?
Well, it's first thing I should say is that fan fiction is not new, and sometimes we call it literature. The Wild Sargasso Sea by Jean Rees is is Jane Eyre fan fiction.
Okay.
Four by J.M. Coetzee is the Robinson Crusoe fan fiction, right? So there's a tradition of people interpreting and playing with classic texts and all of that. Now, what was the thing about Harry Potter? Modern fan fiction existed. Harry Potter turned fan fiction into a global phenomenon.
Yes.
And so did the internet. And what I say in the book, I truly believe this to be true, and I mean, as I'm someone who's very interested in history, is that what basically happened is Harry Potter happened at the same time as the internet, and J.K. Rowling took 3 years to write her 5th book. So millions of people had an addiction to Harry Potter. They had gone online, and if you remember the internet in those days, there was no social media. There was only communities. So actually, the internet was much more community-driven in those days. So I think for every individual person, the motivation to write fan fiction is different. What it gave these authors was a chance to find an audience. If you wrote Harry Potter fan fiction, so take the person in the book called Athena Alice, right? There were people like her in real life. They had 50,000 or 100,000 people reading their chapters every month. Now, Sabin and Abdullah will tell you, and I can certainly tell you that if you write a novel in India, unless your name is Chetan Bhagat or Amish, you're not selling 50,000 or 100,000 copies, right? 5,000 or 10,000 is considered spectacular. So I'm talking about a really large number of people who were reading these fan fiction. They were waiting every month for the new chapter. So if you're a writer and 100,000 people are going to read your story, that was a way to find an audience.
Okay, now your novel talks about 2 different worlds. One, a real world with loneliness, gender difference, and color consciousness. And the other, a screen world where a character can assume an alternate identity and where gender is fluid. While moving between these 2 worlds and while developing the plot with 4 different characters, 4 different perspectives, you must have undergone a real pressure, especially while reworking and editing your novel. Okay, so because if you delete a part from Kannan, then you have to connect it with the Rebecca's part. So can you share the experience of editing and reworking the novel?
Yeah. So, I'm now writing another book, and that book has a first-person narrator. And I've really seen how much easier it is to write a book from one perspective. When you start including, because I don't just have 4, as you know, I don't just have 4 main characters. I write in the third person from each of their perspectives. And that actually made the book much more complicated to structure, much more complicated to write. And the problem was, the reason I did it that way is that I had these 4 characters and I didn't want to tell the story from only one of their perspectives. I thought nobody's going to tolerate 250 pages of Kannan. Because Kannan is a difficult guy, right? And so you have to have him in small doses. And Malti is much more likable. She's much more relatable. So I had those kind of things in mind. Yes, and it's all about you don't want to stay with one character. Now, Malti, as you would know, Malti is away from the book for quite some time. And a lot of readers in the book have said to me, you should have made Malti the main protagonist, right? But the book was set in Boston. I didn't think it would work with her as the main protagonist. I don't know if I got it right, frankly. I think it was a difficult balance to strike. It was constantly on my mind. And it was my first book. I didn't really know all books are imperfect. I think with first books you're starting out, you don't have many books behind you, many years of solving these problems. I was kind of groping around in the dark and hoping that it worked.
Okay, you have taken characters from a living author's novel.
Yeah.
And is there any legal or copyright issue with that?
Sure. There would have been a legal or a copyright issue with that if I had made them characters in my book. So instead I merely refer to them. If Hermione Granger walked into the pages of my book, I can't do that.
Okay.
But I'm allowed to discuss her, yes.
Yes, okay. Good. Okay, now the last direct question to you about your book.
If Kishore, if I can just go back to that voices point that Keshava mentioned, and Keshava, you mentioned White Sargasso Sea. It's a very interesting perspective, because that's the book where Vartha finally gets her voice after 120 years, and it completely changes the whole perspective and how we look at things. So I think voice kind of changes the narrative in a significant way.
Yeah.
And just wanted to highlight that point. It's absolutely critical for somebody writing fiction.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last question to you, Sidhartha, if you want, you can add something more. If you want to ask something, because you are yourself a Harry Potter fan.
You go ahead. Sorry?
You have read Harry Potter now. So if you want, you can ask some questions about.
You go ahead, Kishore.
Okay. So so in page number 63. Okay, based on Harold Bloom's essay, Rebecca draws conclusion that JKR wasn't a literary genius in the classical sense, but there was something accidental about her magic. Do you share the same opinion, or is it the character's opinion?
My opinion has changed. When I was a child, I loved her books. They were not my favorite books.
Okay.
I do think that as a writer of children's books, I think there are many superior writers.
Yes.
So my own favorite writer as a child was, and remains my favorite children's writer, was Philip Pullman, writing at the same time as J.K. Rowling. But the fact remains, and it's in the same paragraph as the one that you quote, there are only two universal writers, Shakespeare and J.K. Rowling, and J.K. Rowling became universal in her own lifetime while she was writing. Nobody, including me, is able to satisfactorily explain this. Hence the accidental magic line there. But no, do I think that J.K. Rowling in the classical sense is a great writer? No, I don't. But I did love her books. And they were very important to me. Sure.
Okay, so thank you, Keshav. Now we'll move to Sabin Iqbal, cliffhangers. Sabin. Okay, so in the cliffhangers, Sabin follows the adventures of four friends who are Muslim by birth, but very cautious of the trappings of religion. Musa, Taha, Jahangir, and Usman live in a small sea town in Kerala, Varkala. So the quality of a place in literature is subtly determined by the manner in which a character arrives in it, moves within it, and departs from it. Varkala is a tourist destination, and you find people from different countries visiting Varkala. And you have effectively portrayed the cliffs and beach of the small sea town that it appears like a character. People who move out of Varkala are seen suffering. Jahangir lost his girlfriend when he went to Goa. Vivekanand, he lost his life. And men who leave Varkala suffer a lot in Gulf. So do you think that Varkala is a safe haven for the cliffhangers to grow up in complete freedom?
That's a good question. It's quite challenging question to answer. But then why Varkala? If you ask me why Varkala, because it's even though I've written manuscripts before, there are we've got a couple of them. One of them is coming out soon with HarperCollins. It all started. The cliffhanger started with a sentence. I was in Doha. I was in a mall waiting for my cousin to come, Then there was quickly wrote it down. That it's the stories about four boys at the cliff who are trying to learn English by talking to the foreigners, foreign tourists. This is the thought that came to me, and I came back home. When I was back in Trivandrum, I started to write, and it got, the place got, it grew on me. Characters emerged from, I don't know from where. They began to, appear before me, telling me, write me, and they spoke. I just wrote. This is really, as Keshav's book, Accidental Magic, for me. So then Varkala, I grew up in Varkala. I know it's a Gulf pocket,
Yes.
Most of the houses, we have one or two people working in the Gulf. I was in the Gulf. My father was in the Gulf. My uncles, my cousins are all in the Gulf working there. It's a Gulf pocket, literally. So if we go, habitually we go out of Varkala. But I haven't noticed, and as you pointed out, in characters, in the book, when they move out a novel, they get killed or they suffer tragedy. I don't know. It just happened,
Okay.
So, but I think Varkala is a place you must be knowing, the place where people move out, and that's why there are a lot of many grass widows in Varkala. That's my, actually, I try to portray that in the book, the women of Varkala, because their husbands are in the Gulf. They are they live, away from them, their problems, their, psychological issues and all that. So Varkala is like that. People move out and come in. But in the character, in the novel, yes, there are a couple of unsavory things happen to these characters who move over to Varkala. That's quite excellent.
Okay. Now we'll come to the next question. So
Yeah.
the growing hatred for the other is increasing in India and leading to communal tensions. And it is really tough to articulate those fears.
Yeah.
Fiction, in a way, helps to express such situations and put things in a clear manner. You have done that in your novel. Your characters are wayward youths who don't exhibit their religion by wearing any sign of religion or politics on their body. Their clothes are track suits and Puma shoes that they get from their relatives in Gulf. You show that people can exist as independent individuals in society, and in a way is a positive message for the youth. Since you play two roles, that of a writer and a journalist, do you think that writers of fiction have more advantage in articulating unnamed fears?
Of course, we address unnamed fears. As a journalist, we address that. But in a news report, I can't write that.
Okay.
But in fiction, that's the good thing about fiction. I can exaggerate. I can lie about facts. But there is a skeleton of facts. I based all the incidents on things that have happened in Kerala. Okay, and I'm quite restless at the increasing intolerance in our society, as a human being, as a journalist, and as a writer. So it is reflected in the book, and I place these four boys who are born in a particular religion. They have Muslim names, but they are caught between two communities. There is communal tension. There is, any time it can get spoiled.
Yes.
So this is a situation. And yes, we do address unnamed fears. That's what we are writers of.
Okay, now coming to another question. Men in Varkala lead a kind of existence in which they have no firm roots in the small town. The good part of their life is wasted out in the desert, working as laborers, just like you mentioned. And when they return, their wives dominate them, like the case of Musa's father. Your novel has very powerful women characters like Tahira, who forces her lover to make love to her in the bathroom with a black spider as witness. Musa's mother, who controls the menfolk in the family. The conflict between Musa's mother and Bushra Andy. All shows that in the little space in Varkala, women dominate the show. How did you manage to create believable female characters while avoiding cliches?
No, so Dr. Ram, it's not all women are dominating in character.
Okay.
It is not. See, long life away from their husbands. They've more or less grown indifferent to an extent frigid, extent, then this sort of bitterness, it could happen. I'm not categorizing them because it could happen. I've seen people, they're very angry. And I've asked myself, why are they angry? Maybe this is what they happen because they've lived away from a husband for 30 years. If your husband is away for 30 years and is coming for a month on for an annual vacation, you only live 3 years with him. It's strange. You can't imagine that kind of a marriage anywhere else. That is why the Gulf expatriates are unique as a community.
Yes.
If you go, people in the US or Indian expats in the US or Europe, anywhere, they settle there, settle down, build their house or buy their house. It's okay. For a Gulf immigrant, even after 50 years in the expat countries, they're second-class citizens. They can be kicked out any time. But still, there is a permanence of impermanence there. But the women back home, my father was away. My mother, I have seen her agony. I've seen her sadness. I grew up seeing all this.
Yes.
How she used to wait for his letters to come. There's no phone. We don't know. We never used to know what happened to him, whether he was alive or no, unless the next letter arrived. So this is what I have seen while growing up. This has obviously influenced my writing and reflected in the cliffhangers.
Okay, then you highlight the issue of Maoists in the novel by presenting the rebellious Vivekanand, who walked away from the civil service academy and followed the revolutionary path. And on the other side is Balan, the soda lime shop owner, who is a spiritual guru of the Hindu Rashtra Sangh. On one side, you represent Maoist extremism, and on the other side, the religious fanaticism. Your cliffhangers are free from both and are innocent. But they are constantly harassed by the police and often are arrested. Though Vivekananda gets killed, Balan is not arrested for his crimes. Are you representing a world where the course of law runs in different ways for different individuals?
The reason the inspector didn't arrest Balan is for the sake of the boys.
Yes.
All through the novel, this SI is portrayed as a cruel, indifferent, foolish, often foolish man officer. But at the end, I'm not giving it away. But then, we come to see him in a different light.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's conscious. Because actually, he's concerned about these boys. If he arrests him, it will cause trouble in a way to these boys.
Yes.
So maybe that's true because that's true of the communal tension we are living in. In Kerala, relatively communal tension free, but there is a layer or something is boiling within, something is brewing. I always feel it is there. It could break out any moment. I may be wrong, but then that's what I feel.
Okay.
It's a political novel in that sense.
Okay, then in your novel there are two incidents that actually happened. The rape of
even this Maoist killing happened in
yes, of course.
You will remember.
Yes. But that happened in Varkala, near Varkala and in Varkala also. The rape of a tourist and the killing of a aristocrat by the Dalits. Okay. I think it is Thambi in the novel. Character's name is Thambi. Okay. While presenting these incidents, the journalist in you must have interfered and directed the writer. How do you manage to keep the journalist in you from interfering with your fiction writing?
My journalist keeps giving me incidents, As the writer comes in and says, exaggerates it, give it color, give it different names, character, places them in different, landscape, But I need my writer, my journalist, to help me with my, to help the writer in me. I need my journalists, both of them.
Both of them. Okay, now you already mentioned this question, the answer. Anyway, I'll still ask it. What is the message that you want to communicate through your novel? Because I asked this because at the end of the novel, as you mentioned, S.I. Devan drives away, saying, "Remember, we are living in strange times, and your identity is your enemy." And Musa realizes that we can by no means undo our identity. So do you mean to say that Muslim situation is precarious in India, in Kerala.
No, I'm just presenting it. I'm not trying to prove
Prove anything, okay.
anything. It's true. It is true. Names give away. If you ask my name, if I say it's Sabin Muhammad Iqbal, it conveys something to you. It does. That's a reality. Whether whether it is good or bad is a different thing. But when I ask your name, it's Kishore, immediately something tells me. If I ask Abdullah, Keshava, our names are our names do communicate
Yes.
something. So that's why I said Musa, Jahangir, Usman, and Taha. They are Muslim boys with Muslim names, and these things happen. They could be up to no good. They could be up to no good, and that's why the inspector tells them, "Remember, we are living in strange time." Even before the inspector says a tourist, Jonathan tells them, "Remember, your
Yes.
name, your enemy." So names do matter. For a brief period, I live in Delhi. I was refused a flat when trying to rent a flat in Delhi. So I didn't get because they said the name is a problem. So
Okay.
it did happen to me once.
Okay. What about Gulf? When you went to Gulf, did you face
Sabine,
any?
if I can,
Okay,
Yeah.
Sidharth, carry on.
sorry, I was just curious, Sabine, do you think the kind of book you're writing, there's a need for more and more of book like this from diverse voices, which kind of reinforces identity, because it helps people to look at things from a different perspective, isn't it?
It
So
does. Yeah, it does.
what's your take on that?
We need stories from different angles, perspectives. I do believe, yeah, if we are going through, our country is going through such a phase, we do need stories. We do voices to to be heard from these voices. But we don't have to be judgmental. You don't have to. I don't believe in judging people. Pointing fingers at you're bad. No one is bad. And Balan in the novel is not a bad person. Even though he believes in certain philosophy, he is not a bad person at heart. He, if you read the book, you know that whatever happened, it happened in a certain circumstance. So generally, I'm not saying that there is hatred. But even if there's hatred, it shouldn't be there. You can be differences of opinion, but if there is hatred, that is to be avoided, and we need these different voices to come up from different angles of society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
By the way, By the way, the book that is coming up, going to be published by HarperCollins soon, is set in the Middle East, and it also talks about expatriates from different countries. I was answering to, this to Kishore. You asked me about expatriates. So my next novel is set in the Middle East, and it talks about a group of, it's a cosmopolitan novel, and it's about a group of expats from different countries who work in a small newspaper there.
Did you experience any kind of discrimination in Gulf, Sabin?
Of course, yeah. You're always Hindis.
Yes.
You're always second class. Whether you're Muslim, Hindu, Christian, you're always Hindis. I've experienced.
Yeah.
Not. It's there. It's there. It's there in the air. I mean, you're not a citizen. You're a resident. You're not a citizen. There. That's a big difference.
Okay. Thank you, Sabin. Now we'll discuss Patna Blues. Abdullah Khan.
Thank you.
Abdullah, please use your mic a bit more. Keep it a bit more closer so that to be more audible. Okay. So, Abdullah, Patna Blues, a big success.
Yes.
With around over 13 translations, and I think you are just like Khan of Khan, conquering almost all of India now. And now we are moving to Europe. Okay, so now your central character Arif is a young man with ambition to become an IAS officer, and there is a Hindu woman, Sumitra, who is happily married with kids. And then an accidental meeting or accidental magic occurs of these two unlikely characters come together, bring them close to each other. And while reading through the text, I observed that Sumitra's interest in Arif is more because of the interest in Urdu poetry do you think that the intellectual compatibility is an important factor in the man-woman relationship for making it long-lasting and strong?
It is not the only factor. I think it is a very important factor. If you are intellectually compatible and you have the common interest, especially if you are living with someone who does not enjoy poetry and you are very fond of poetry, you are doing so the kind of magic which happens between Sumitra and Arif is from that angle. From Arif's side, it is not the intellectual capability only. It is one of the factors, but there are certain things also. He's a young man, just to 20, so there is a lot of sexual tension. Romanticism is there. So there are different layer of, there are different aspect of their relationship. One is romantic. So they are romantically involved, obviously. And from Arif's side, it was love at the first sight. After that, he came to know about Sumitra's interest in Urdu poetry. So that helps it to strengthen the relationship. But from Sumitra's side, first incident was that Arif helped her when her father was sick. So first time he felt gratitude and thankful to him. Then she got chance to read his diary and poetry and his philosophy and his thoughts about the women's rights, and everything together is influencing Sumitra. But once they came closer, so other biological factors, all the primitive feelings starts coming out, and they are trying to restrain themselves, and till the end they are not able to consume their relationship. So that is the main theme or main narrative which goes through the entire book. And since I grew up in a society where this kind of moral values was imbibed, so if you are thinking about some other women, you will go to hell, Jahannam, Dozakh. So the kind of philosophy, the kind of social mores, the kind of values we go through. So Arif came from those kind of society. So it was expected that because his body, his mind, his heart is somewhere else, but his values are different. That is stopping him from. So that is why I have quoted a famous couplet from Ghalib: "Ima mujhe roke hai to khiche hai mujhe kufr, Kaaba mere piche hai Khalisa mere aage." So it is a dilemma of a middle class, lower middle class Muslim man who has a set of values which may be counted as a very conservative if you compare. And I am surprised. Recently, I was talking to a couple of, not couple of, many Southern Baptist persons in the deep South in the US. And I was surprised to know that in a Southern Baptist family, they don't touch alcohol. I know a few persons who will not touch the alcohol, even not go to the restaurant where alcohol is served. Even dancing is frowned upon. So still, and many of small cities in US still, you can't sell alcohol in the city. In Texas itself, there are many small towns where it is a dry city or dry township or dry community. So this kind of moral values Arif has.
Okay.
So that is, but intellectual capability is one of the factors. I have seen many people, because they are intellectually compatible, so their relationship goes very smoothly.
Okay, coming just like in Sabin's cliffhangers, Varkala plays an important role. Just like that, and Patna plays a very important role in your novel, and your story is set in I think Bihar of 1990s, and it shows how difficult life was for common man that time. What about the present Patna? Is there any improvement or?
But sorry to say, nothing much has changed.
Oh.
So whatever it was in 90s, it is almost still there. There might be minor improvement, but
Biharis are unlucky in this sense. They are not getting the kind of leadership. We can bring the change. They have a lot of natural resources, so many rivers, the Bihari lands are very, very fertile, 3-4 times more fertile than Punjabi lands, but they are still at the bottom of the pyramid. SDI is abysmal. So that kind of leadership they are not getting, and most of the Biharis like us are getting out of their home state in the search of livelihood and for the better opportunities or greener pastures. So they are going all the way from Patna to Delhi and other cities, even outside India. So still we don't have much hope. Let's pray.
Okay, and regarding your central character Arif, I as a reader feel that he is very passive. He has been presented in a very passive manner, even though his family has to undergo various problems because of political issues, because of religion, communal violence, and other things. And but he appears to be kind of a very passive person. And as a reader, I would have loved to him to be more aggressive and react violently. Your take on this issue?
Actually, I have been asked this question recently in an interview that Arif is not that aggressive. His even my story is told in a matter of fact tone. He should have shouted loudly about his identity and the kind of discrimination he is facing. It has something to do with my background also, because I mostly lived in a mixed society. Even my father's godfather was a Hindu Brahmin. And when we were kids, he used to take all the decisions. Even a Eid festival, what kind of clothes were to be purchased. So, because my father lost his father at quite young age. So this kind of environment, most of my friends were Hindus, some of them were very strict vegetarians. So even during the Eid festival, my mother had to cook paneer or some vegetables for them. So I have developed a perspective that you can't generalize. So that's the kind of feeling or the kind of experience I had gone through has anyhow percolated to the character of Arif. So Arif has the good experience with his friends also. So he can't blame all the Hindus. So he is reacting wherever it is required, but he is not bitter. He has not developed hatred for the entire community. Unjust so his father is like that also. So and his grandma and his mom, they are like that. So it is quite natural that he has developed that kind of thoughts, or the way he think about the other community is very rational way. So that is why he is not aggressive. He is a different kind of character, and such characters really exist in this world.
Okay. So now, as I said earlier, your novel is a great success because you have got over, I think, 13 translations. Is that right?
Yeah. Officially 13, 5, 6 more are pipeline.
Okay, that's why I called you Khan of Khan. Okay. Okay. So, what are the factors that make your novel universally appealing?
Actually, the story of Arif is a universal story. If you take out his Muslim identity only complicates his problem further. So he's into deep trouble and he's being pushed further because he has a certain kind of identity. Otherwise, you take out, because I had got feedback from Karnataka also, from Kashmir also, even outside India. And one Kannada lady told me, she wrote me a big 3-page letter telling her a story how she wanted to be an IS officer, and because his family was not able to afford it, so finally ended up being a middle school teacher. So she was able to identify a lady who was born in 60 or 50s, upper caste Hindu from Karnataka village, is able to identify with a Muslim character born in a small village in Bihar. So the kind of a struggle Arif goes through is the story of almost all South Asian middle class families and lower middle class families, whether it is in Kerala, in Kashmir, in Islamabad, or in Dhaka or Colombo. So I think that is why it is able to appeal to everyone, because everyone was able to look at it. The kind of recently I was talking to my Telugu publisher, so he was telling me that he grew up in 80s and 90s, and his moral values were almost similar to the Arif. So he was able to identify with the Arif. Same middle class family, same constraints of the financial resources, and then you have a pressure, social as well as familial pressure to excel in the career. And they have the strange or conservative social or moral values. So you are continuously struggling with your feelings. Your ability to manage those feelings is limited by the kind of values you have imbibed during your childhood. So that is why everyone was able to look at the Arif, a bit of his or her personality. I think that is why. Otherwise, as a reader, you can also guess what is working and what is not working.
Okay, Abdullah, and the way you ended the story, okay, as a reader, I was not quite satisfied, because I felt that there are some threads to be followed and explanations to be given. And
Yes, yes,
I guess that you are planning a sequel. Is that right?
no, I was thinking about sequel, but I don't think I want to spoil the aftertaste of my novel. So whatever, some stories are left untold, because in some cases, in some instances, I don't know what exactly happened with the Arif and what happened with the other characters and what happened to the Zakir. All these things, some of
that
things
that
I
is a
don't
part.
know.
Okay, as a reader, I would like to know what
And
happened to Zakir.
I want reader to complete it. So I am giving a task homework to readers. So you complete the story, be part of this creative journey.
Okay.
So I have done my part. Now you do your own.
Do you think that as Arif is interested in civil services and he tried really hard to win civil services? Do you think that this was a kind of punishment for his relationship with a married woman, as he believes?
No, I don't think. As a writer, I don't think so. So there are many circumstances. Even Sumitra were not there, he would have faced this kind of challenges, because he was committed towards his goal. But hundreds or thousands of people are appearing at that examination. It is not possible that everyone will go through. I have seen many boys who studied 16 hours, 18 hours, and ended up as a primary school teacher.
Yes.
So many committed suicide. So this kind of, so that is why in the second novel, I will talk a bit about the second
We will
novel.
discuss that in the next.
Okay.
Okay, we have a question for you about that. Okay, second now. Okay,
Okay,
Sidharth,
fine,
you
fine.
want to add something, or after that we'll hand it over to the
Just
audience and.
just a very quick one. I think all the three writers talked about their experiences, memories, and how they drew from that to write their novel. So I think is it memories that form a very important part of any narrative? Is it a source where we go back again and again, to nourish ourselves and to write from? What's your, as writers, and this is to all three of you, what's your view on that? Memories and its time, memory, and its role in your writings.
From me, you want a reply from me? Hello?
Yeah, you can go first.
Okay.
Abdullah, you can go
Actually,
first.
I think memories are a strange beast. So they play hide and seek with you. Of course, this is the main source of information for a fiction writer, at least for me. But it is very tricky thing. So memories which really exist in your mind or in your brain is not the exact copy of whatever. It has been tempered. It is like someone is using the brush and because you are going through a different kind of experience. As a kid, whatever you have seen was a different because your mind was clear from all the prejudices, predilections, and now you have gone through the different kind of experience throughout the years, and now whatever you have stored in the hard disk is not exactly same. At times, even the fake memories, the memories which you borrowed from someone else, becomes your own memory, and you are not able to know. You are not lying. If you are, I am telling you that this happened to me. I am not lying. Actually, this happened with someone, or in the course of time, I started believe that this happened with me, and I convinced myself. So memories could be a tricky thing. So as a writer, you have to filter it out and use different kind of tools to decide what is to be taken, what is not to be taken. For example, if you are getting a fish from a river you have to cut out what part is to be cooked, what is to be thrown out. That you have to decide.
That's a very important point, Abdullah. Sabin, you want to go next? You also mentioned writing therapeutic value as well. Would you go next?
Yeah, memories do. We collect experiences and memories as we go on, and it does come up in the writing process. So unless you write a semi-autobiographical novel, these memories and experiences come in as very objective. And as Abdullah said, you decide what to take and what to leave out. Yeah. Memories, experiences, incidents do come up. I mean, it play a part. We can't create anything, out of nothing. There has to be something. We are not creating anything from vacuum. There is something that we've seen, we read, we've experienced that play at the back. We create out of that.
Kishore, your take on that?
So not a lot to add to what Sabin and Abdullah have said, but except just in my case, one of the main motivations for drivers for writing fiction. Why did I take up this line of work? Is that it gives me a chance to be other people, to live other lives. I can only live in this life. I can only live my own life, but as a writer, one can actually live other people's lives as well. And actually, so because readers have a tendency, it's just a psychological thing. When they're reading to assume that something's autobiographical.
Yeah.
And when I finished this book and showed it to some friends and family and people that knew me, one of the first things they said was, "Wow, you made it all up. We can't recognize anyone in this book," which is exactly what's the truth. So to me, that's one of the really attractive things about writing fiction.
Right. Thanks, Kishore. Back to you, Kishore.
Yeah, okay. So Professor Harikrishnan has joined us. So Professor Harikrishnan, please, you can interact with the...
Hello, Dr. Kishore.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear.
It's such a pleasure talking to these young writers. And I just have a common question for all three. Hope they'll respond. See, Keshav's novel has magic and porter. Sabin's has an exotic village. Abdullah's has Urdu poetry. I was thinking whether these young English writers, they exoticize places, they resort to esoteric writing. They have this problem of identity. Is this a ready mix for these young English writers? Are they not able to transform the ordinary into the universal?
I haven't...
Thank you.
Yeah, can I? Yeah. Can I, Dr. Kishore?
Yeah, yes, go ahead.
I haven't painted Varkala in a different hue. I mean, if you've read the book, I haven't added any magic to Varkala. I've tried to be as realistic as possible. That's what I said. I picked from incidents that have happened. Okay, and I write in certain way. I've fictionalized them, but I don't think that's what I said. I said in one of the questions earlier. I said Indian writing in English or Indian English writing have changed. It is more. It has got the smell of the soil now these days. You take any novel from Anis Salim. He's also from Varkala. There is common man's stories, villagers' stories, Abdullah's story. But that it doesn't actually matter. A story is a story. The only thing is that it has to be written well. Keshava, he shouldn't be held, and because he's written a story out of people living in Boston. That doesn't, we shouldn't be looking down upon that, because that's a story. It's a story, a well-written story. So story is a story. Fiction, I don't think we kind of add magic for the sake of adding magic. And even though Marcus is my favorite writer, I've included elements of magic realism in this book if you read it. Yes, but it is not to kind of typecast us as we write these exotic things and all that. I beg to differ. Thank you.
Okay.
Keshav, you want to respond?
Kishore?
No, I think the question is a very valid one. I don't think it applies to these books, the three books that we're talking about today.
Yeah.
But it is what has happened, which is quite interesting. And I say this from a perspective as a publisher as well, is that there's a difference between what the Indian readership perhaps wants and what the Western publishers might want in a book about India.
Yeah, maybe.
So if you look at the books, there have been 3 or 4 really successful books from India that have done well in the West. Midnight Children was the first. Then you had A Suitable Boy, you had The God of Small Things, and finally you had The White Tiger. And I think that there's often an attempt in Western publishing houses to try to replicate these books, to try to find the new God of Small Things, new White Tiger, new Midnight Children, and so on and so forth.
Panelist add question.
In terms of exoticizing or adding magic or what may be, firstly you have to look at whether it works. Let's take magical realism. There's well done magical realism and there's badly done magical realism, like everything else. Right? So there's Marquez and there's 100 bad Marquez clones. So we have to apply our aesthetic judgments as readers and say, has the writer pulled this off or not? The only other thing I would say is I try to be wary of making moral judgments about writers. I'm happy to say a book is badly written, but I would rather not say, the writer sought to exoticize or whatnot. I would say that the writer has failed to evoke this place in a compelling way, perhaps.
Okay. So I would like to add, many people might think, especially my book, which is set in rural Bihar, many might think it is exotic or something has been deliberately added to make it spicy or the melodramatic. But the fact is that I have written something which I lived through. It was not borrowed from anyone. I was born in a small village and studied in a madrasa, in a Urdu medium school, and I have gone through that rigor of that kind of life when most of students in my school had to come without any slipper, any shoes. Even I used to protest to my mother, I will not wear the slipper because my father was working in a police department, so we were relatively well off. So, and as far as Urdu poetry is concerned in UP and Bihar, who has lived there, this is part of the life. In my personal life, I use more Urdu poetry than the Arif is using in this novel, in Patna Blues. So it is not exotic. It is part of anyone who is not studied Urdu literature and who is not aware of history of Urdu literature, even those people also will quote wrongly or rightly a couplet from here and there from Ghalib and Iqbal and Firaq Gorakhpuri. So it is part of the life, especially in UP, Bihar and the surrounding areas in Delhi. So Urdu poetry is a part of life. As far as my mother tongue is concerned, Urdu is not my mother tongue. Bhojpuri is a mix of Bhojpuri and Bajika language. So if I had decided to write in Hindi, still I had to translate my Bhojpuri sentiment, Bhojpuri feelings into Hindi. In English too, I am translating those feelings. So if you are conveying a story of a different culture in a different language, you have to do the trade-offs. So I think the kind of characters they were, both were Urdu poets. So it was expected that they will use the poetry in their daily conversations. So I don't think anything I have written, I personally believe is exotic. And there are certain events which are inspired by the real things. And they look melodramatic, they look exotic. Those which are inspired from, and whatever I have written from my imagination, those are being told to me by the critics that these are the real things. So my imaginations are the real thing, and whatever I have included in my novel from my real life experience, which I have seen from my own eyes, not I have just heard, I have seen those. So it's matter of perspective and taste. And many people coming from Harvard or Oxford or from big cities, living in the London, then writing about the rural Bihar, he might make a mistake, but I have spent major part of my life in those villages and small towns. So I think I tried to be as honest as possible, as authentic as possible, but many times we look at the same city or village from different point of view. Just one example, one book about a Patna I was reading. This is called Patna Rough Cut. I was surprised where this Patna exists. I have never seen that kind of Patna, but that is also a kind of experience the writer had gone through. So this is how, and it is up to the readers to decide whether they are willing to buy my argument, they are willing to part of my story or not. They may find fault, and it's good. If I get feedback from the readers and the critics, it will help me to improve my next.
I want to very quickly go back to Keshava's point about the difference in publishing in the West and in India. I think you're absolutely right, Keshava, about the kind of stereotyping expectations that the Western publishing houses have from Indian writing. We have seen it happening to Indian writing. We have seen it happening to Nigerian writing. We have seen it happening again and again. And that kind of, and fortunately, I would say, the kind of books coming out of India is different. It's not bound by those stereotyped expectations. A lot of bad books are coming as well, probably, but those are not restricted by those stereotyped expectations. So that's a very, very positive development here.
Yeah. I agree. That's a great point.
Okay, so we have Veena Narayanan joining us. Veena from Ernakulam, please ask your question.
Hello.
Okay. Veena?
Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
yes, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Veena, welcome.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see all of you. Abdullah, Sidhartha, we're classmates. I hope you remember me.
Yes, good to hear you, Veena.
Yeah, thank you. My first question is to Sabin. And it's about, like, you were talking to Kishore about your, Kishore was asking you about your journalistic as well as your fiction writing. Now, is there something that you do to make the switch between the two? He was asking whether one interferes with the other. How do you transition? Do you have a system or something?
No system. It happens organically. When you sit down to write, I said I keep an eye on all the events that happen, and it's part of my job. And I keep a track of all this. And now, where do you find your story? We find stories from things happen around us.
Yeah.
So it's one of the one of the ways to find stories is, keep an eye around, keep your eyes and ears open. That's what I do. And there is no deliberate switching on, switching off thing happens. Writing is magical. When you sit down and write, things happen. I mean, in this book, as I said, grew out of a sentence. Characters, for example, the Musa's mother, she just popped up one fine night when I was writing. She just popped up. So I never thought about that character at all. But she's a very powerful character in the book. Very, very.
Yeah.
So
you said
yeah.
Your mother had influenced the particular.
Yeah, but my mother is not angry. My mother is not bitter. My mother may be bitter, I don't know. But then she's not dominating mother. But that is where I exaggerate, But then I see all these. To answer your question, there is no deliberate switching from journalist to writer. It happens.
Thank you. Thank you. Kishore, can I have a question for Keshava?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Yeah. Because Keshava has written about Harry Potter, before you submitted it to publishers, did you have a fear that when it is actually out there, people would mistake it for fan fiction? Did you have such a fear, like because it is based on Harry Potter and it says so on the blog?
Sure. The answer is no, I did for the following reason, right? So it's not about Harry Potter, it's about people, it's about a community of Harry Potter fans, right? So
yeah.
Well, that's no different from a community of cricket fans or a community of people who love jazz music or any community, right? So because I wasn't dealing with the Harry Potter books themselves.
Yeah.
So I thought it wouldn't be too difficult to make it clear that this is not fan fiction.
Thank you, Keshava. Abdullah, how are you doing? Can I have a question for you? Yeah. Okay. So, what could you tell us? What, as Kishore said, I also feel that there is a story lurking behind Arif's brother. I think something more interesting will happen to Arif's brother. I don't know, but you have thrown it to us. Okay, but can I ask you that what was the one thing that kept you going through all those years of rejections? Can you share it, or is it okay for you to share it?
Yeah, of course. Actually, I decided to write a book at very young age, so I was determined that I will. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I can hear you, Abdullah.
Okay. So, when
time for Q&A.
Okay, go ahead.
I can't hear you now. I can't hear you now. I can hear some other voices.
Okay, go ahead, Abdullah.
Kishore.
Somebody's mic is on. Please switch it off.
Yeah, I think it's Dr. Chitra. Somebody's mic is on.
Okay. So my wife was a source of inspiration also. She was also making sure that I should not stop writing. So after each rejection, I used to submit to 3. One rejection from an agent, I used to submit to the 3 agents. For each rejection, 3 submissions. So I kept going and kept revising. Finally, it happened.
Good. Thank you. Okay, Kishore, over to you.
Thank you, Veena. Okay, now we will have some students asking questions.
Yes.
Ardra Dayal, you can start. Ardra, your mic is on. Please ask.
Oh, okay, sir. I would like to ask Abdullah Khan whether he ever felt like giving up the thought of publishing his book, because I have heard that it took him over 19 years to take his book to the next stage, that is to the fiction stage. So had you ever felt that too desperate and felt like giving up writing or something like that?
No, you are asking about the self-publishing.
No, she asked whether you felt like giving up writing.
Yes, at times I obviously at times but it was temporary. For a few days I would think that I'm going to stop writing, but then the kind of restlessness will seize me again. I would be back to my desktop and start revising my manuscript. And as far as self-publishing, I never thought of self-publishing because the most horrible dreams or nightmares I used to have that I had self-published my book. So I woke up with a start, and then my wife would ask, "What happened?" I have self-published my book. No publisher took it. So I never thought of self-publishing. Never thought of that I am going to leave writing or stop trying. I thought I will keep trying even till the death. I say goodbye to this world. I will keep trying. So that was clear from the very first day.
Okay, Dr. Anup Nair, you have a question?
Is it audible?
Yeah, yes, audible.
Yes, sir.
Am I audible? Yeah, I mean, nothing special as such. Just a thing like, anything special about your lives that that what we can't find in our Wikipedia and other sources. Anything that you'd like to share with us, writers? Something about yourself that you won't find in any other sources of reference books or sources of reference. Anything special would you like to share with us? Something that we've not shared before, we're not aware of?
Keshav?
I don't think so.
Keshav, you have anything to share?
No, I don't think I really have anything interesting to add there.
Yeah. Neither do I.
Now, Ashwati Chandrabanu, do you have a question to ask? Yeah, Adul Gobinathan, you asked a question, so can you ask it now? Adul?
Kishore, some people are typing their questions, so you can ask them to come and ask it.
Abdullah, okay, but the problem is that I can't see the chat. That's why I'm calling.
Amrita ji,
okay.
She has typed some questions.
Amulya or Amrita? Amrita ji, okay. Amrita, please ask your question. Amrita ji.
Hello, sir.
Okay, ask your question.
Hello.
Sir, when we write for journalist as a journalist, and also when we write as a passion, what are the difference that we face when we write for both the things? And do you really think that writing as a passion is something so spiritual or something so divine that, as in this discussion, it was once told that certain people are recognized after their lifespan. Some people are not. So this art really is something so divine or spiritual that is gifted.
You want the Sabin to answer this question? Okay, Sabin, I think the question is directed.
So is there a difference between writing as a journalist and writing for passion? Is that a question?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, you mean journalistic writing and creative writing? Is that is the difference between these two, or
I think that it is kind of what is the difference between whether when you are writing as a fiction writer, is there any spiritual element in that, and when you are writing as a journalist, of course there will be no spiritual element. So I think that is what
writing and spirit. I mean, but then we feel the urge to write. As Abdullah said, we wake up in the middle of the night with a start, and I have to write. I have this. For me, I have to write. Writing is my way of surviving. Writing is my way of escaping from certain personal troubles in my life. When I sit down in my corner, I have a corner to write. I sit down there. I have a target of say 1,500 words a day. I have to write. That's my discipline. Whether I'm inspired, I don't believe in the muse inspiring me. This is. I enjoy writing. I enjoy creating character, whether good or bad, or they make it to the publisher. Get it published. It's a different thing. There was a period. I also was rejected many times. The Cliffhangers is my third manuscript. I've got 4 and 5, lined up and outlined, ready. So for me, I can't stop writing. Whether there was a time when I thought I would never be published, but that did not stop me from writing. I'm not saying that all I write is good, but then I have to write. I have to write as like I have to breathe. And this is very personal for me. But I write in the middle of my house. It is my corner. I have to sit down and write. It's a daily routine. It's my practice. So for me, there is not. Of course, I have to. As a journalist, I do my reports. I write my report, my edit. That's different. So, but this creative writing is my way of survival.
Okay.
Kishore, P.S. Rao has raised hand. P.S. Rao and Sri Prasad.
P.S. Rao. Okay.
You can ask P.S. Rao to join. P.S. Rao, can you ask your question?
Yeah, P.S. Rao.
Yes, sir. Very lovely good evening to all the panelists. And it's a very great heartening. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a great occasion to come in touch with you this way. And writing is a great passion for people like us. But my question is, where does the the inspiration to write actually? Is it the expression of the self, or it is an reflection to the surroundings, or does it come out of musings or imagination? Where does the line actually generate? Another question regarding characterization: where do those characters actually take place? How? Please, any of you.
Mr. Rao, I would like to answer your question. As far as inspiration is concerned, so it depends upon your personal choice. It depends upon the writer, every writer. But basically, I will tell you from my own experiences or whatever I have got to know from the other writers, fellow writers. So, story idea, inspiration can come from anywhere, anytime, from news item, from a TV news, from someone you met during a journey, or someone you have seen, or some cinema. Anything can come up. It can be an event, it can be in a character. For example, I am going to give reference of my next novel. So, when I visited my home district, Motihari, to see the place where George Orwell was born. So I saw the building, that old bungalow where great writer Orwell was born. And then I again got chance to look at a photograph where 1-year-old Eric Arthur Blair, also known as George Orwell, was shown with his nanny, an Indian lady who used to take care of George Orwell when he was a kid and was living in India. So from that photograph and from that building, I thought of what happens if some Indian boy who is also born in this building in some strange circumstances, how this event will impact his life. And out of that particular visit, particular thought, I created an entire novel. So, this is how the things happen. You meet some interesting people with a kind of mannerism, a kind of story, and you want to know where this character has come from and where he will go. And you follow him, and this is how you get the story.
Okay, now Sri Prasad, please ask. All those who want to ask questions, it will be good if you raise your hands like Sri Prasad and Mr. P.R. Rao.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you very much for giving this chance. I do have a question to Keshava Guha. Sir, these days, most of our writings or learnings, these are all having predicaments with a kind of self-consciousness. My question is, while you write, what will be the first thing that you want to learn from?
No, the question is not clear. Second part, please repeat that.
So while you write, what is the first thing that you have to keep away from? Because as a writer, you always have this kind of self-consciousness, what you have to write, what you have to deal with things, and what will be the first thing that you have to keep away from? My question is to Keshava.
Is the question clear, Keshava? Keshava?
Hello?
I think he has gone offline. He's not visible.
Ah, yes, okay. Keshava?
There is there.
Okay. Keshava, did you hear?
Keshava, the question is to you.
No. Sound is...
Is there the same question Abdullah answered?
No. There is another question for you.
Okay, yeah. What's the question? Sorry.
Sir, these things we do have a predicament to wrestle with a self-consciousness. So my question is, sir, while you write, what is the first thing that you have to keep away from?
To keep away from?
Yeah.
Honestly, and I would have to just bring up what Sabin said a couple of minutes ago. Over time, my experience is that I don't need any to keep away from anything. For example, right? Distractions like phone, internet, etc. They're not as interesting as actually the act. So, writing is... there are 100 other things I have to do every day, but the high point of the day is the writing, And so if you can make the space for that, now I think it's very different for people again. As I said, I live on my own, all of that. It's very different for people who, possibly have children, families, etc. to attend to. I don't have those constraints. Yeah. So this is really not a problem. I mean, writing every day is not a problem for me. And I think what Sabin said is so important. You can't sit around and wait for the muse or what have you. That discipline of daily writing, if you can get into it, there's nothing like it. Look, what you write may not be good. You may throw it out, rewrite it, all of that. But that daily work, what a joy and privilege and pleasure to be able to do this.
Yeah.
Okay, now we have Needu Baby. Needu Baby, please ask the question.
My question is to Sabin, sir. Sir, was the journey to Gulf an inevitable journey for the protagonists, or was it like a backup plan for the youngsters? As you know, Varkala is like a doorway where you can always go to France, which is Gulf countries, because there have been generations of people seeking fortune in Gulf countries. Or, was it like that, a backup plan, or the Gulf journey an inevitable journey for the youngsters of Varkala?
Yeah. Two things. One, youngsters from Varkala going to the Gulf is mostly extension of their life. They somehow they end up going to the Gulf. It has changed a bit, but it was more common in the years in the past. But then, if you read the cliffhangers, their struggle is to get away from that fate. They want to speak English. They want to. They don't want to follow the fate of their fathers. It's sad that they end up doing so. So, the interesting point is that if you're a troublemaker in Varkala, if you're a boy who's, past 18, or, you get a passport and you'll be, sent to the Gulf. And, for it's not just for making money, but to, save you from the troubles at home. I hope I have answered your question. For the cliffhangers, there is no backup point, backup plan. They know this inevitably they'll be sent to the Gulf. They want to escape that. They're trying to. Thank you. I hope I answered.
Next is Gauri Nandana. Gauri,
Can I be able to? So my question is to Abdullah Khan sir.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
So my
Please.
sir. So you have earlier mentioned that your book is being translated to several languages. So how did it come about, and do you worry about the little details getting lost in these translations?
Uh, Actually, when Hindi translation rights was offered, so I decided to rewrite my novel in Hindi because I was not happy with the people trying to rephrase my sentences in English from English to Hindi. So it was awkward, but for other languages, I can't control. I have heard from many journalist writers that Telugu translation is very fantastic and Tamil is also very, very good. Hindi I have done myself and Urdu I have collaborated with someone because I know Urdu and Hindi. But for other language I don't have control. And Marathi is okay. Marathi is also fine, but I don't know how it sounds in Malayalam. So
You asked me once, right?
so I don't know how it is in Malayalam. I have no idea. So I don't have control. So I have leave it to the better judgment of my language publishers and translator. So I can't help. I can't do anything.
Okay.
Okay, I think Devayani Agarwal has a question. And
So this is the Malayalam. So Kishore, I will be giving two books, one in English and one in Malayalam.
Okay.
Anyone interested in Malayalam you can choose anyone on the basis of question asked or whatever you want. If anybody is interested in in Malayalam, I can send one Malayalam copy and one English copy. Signed.
Okay, we have Devayani Agarwal. Please ask your question, Devayani. Devayani?
You should unmute.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah, no, there is some technical problem with Devayani's mic.
Okay.
Okay, we'll come back to her later.
You can go to the next and then if she is able to connect, you can.
Yeah, Devayani, can you ask?
Kishore?
Devayani? Okay, she's there's some problem with her mic. Okay, Devayani, please ask. Okay, so I think there's some problem with the mic. Okay, anybody else wants to ask a question? Otherwise, we'll conclude the session.
Hello.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
sir?
yes. Okay, carry on.
Okay. There was some technical problem. So thank you for this opportunity. It was question is to Keshava that as a writer, how far you address your identity as a cosmopolitan? Because especially in a world where global and local are at war, is it really possible to be cosmopolitan as there are a lot of politics involved with this term? How do you respond to this?
Keshava, can you hear? No, your mic is...
Keshava,
you unmute yourself.
Your sound is not coming. Voice. Hello? Keshava, we cannot hear you.
No, Keshava has left his mic, headphone, I think. Call him.
Okay, he will rejoin. Sure, you can ask someone else to ask. Keshava can respond when he joins back.
Akshay, yes, you can ask. Akshaya.
Hello,
Yeah, okay,
sir.
ask your question.
Hello, sir. Am I
Yeah,
audible?
yes, of course.
Yeah.
Sir, my question is: have short stories been able to create the same impact as novels?
Whom do you want to answer that question?
Sir, both can answer.
Anyway, can you
Abdullah
guys hear
Khan
me
sir
now?
or
Yeah, you're audible now, Keshav.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Kishore is the best person to respond to because
So
he's
I
a
can
teacher.
answer this question actually. It's a very good question. So let me tell you, as a publisher, we get a lot of submissions of short stories, right? And people keep saying things like, era of short attention span, surely short stories will be becoming more popular. But, the readers, the numbers don't lie. Readers are not interested in short stories. I'm not talking about anecdotes. I'm taking data. Readers, you publish a collection of short stories. Readers, if you put the book stories on the cover, English language readers do not go towards collections of short stories. I don't know what the answer is, why, but it's just a proven fact. Now, in Indian language, the situation is very different. In Kannada, for example, short stories are far more important than novels on the whole. And you still have magazines, and same is true of many other. I'm talking about Kannada because I'm from Bangalore, but there are many other languages where that's the case, Hindi as well. But in English, and also the last thing to keep in mind is in India, we don't have places where you can publish individual short stories. Now, Juggernaut, you can publish them on the Juggernaut app, but we don't have magazine. Which magazine publishes short stories in English? There hardly one or two. So whenever young writers tell me they want to write short stories, I tell them by all means do that. But if you want to be published, you're making your life much more difficult. I mean, novels are what readers actually want, at least in English.
Keshava, Devani, you can ask Keshava now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's audible.
A bit louder.
Just speak up a little bit.
Yes. Okay. So my question is this. I repeat. As a writer, how far you address your identity as a cosmopolitan, especially in a world where global and local are at constant war? Is it really possible to be cosmopolitan, as there is a lot of politics involved with this term itself?
Again, his voice is not.
Keshava, you heard the question? Again. You're not audible, Keshava. Devani. Okay.
Yeah, no problem,
Okay.
sir. That's okay.
Now we have Professor Madhu TR, former head of the department of our department, and I'm quite sure Professor Madhu TR will have a question. Professor Madhu TR. Okay, he's not available, I think. Any other question? Meera, you want to ask a question? Meera? Okay, Minnie Abraham, do you want to ask a question, Minnie?
Kishore.
Okay, then Keshava is back. Okay, Keshava, can you answer Devani's question? Still not clear.
Okay.
Okay, then I think then we will end the session because it is already 2 hours and 15 minutes. And it is great to see that still we have participants, 131. We touched nearly 225, and many informed me that they couldn't join because of some problem with WebEx. And it was raining in Kerala. I have got lots of messages saying that they couldn't join. Anyway, anyway, it was good that we had around 250 participants. Arya, are you there? Can conclude the session with Arya? Oh, okay.
Yes, sir, I'm here. Wow. To be honest, it was an honor for us students to listen to these writers talking about all the processes happening behind a book, how these story worlds are formed and how these characters are born. Trust me, it was an honor. But as we all know, all good things must come to an end. So here we are, and I'm inviting Sri Prasad, and he is the assistant professor, NSS College, Pantalam, to deliver the word. So he's on mute. You have to unmute him.
Thank you very much, Arya. And actually, it was a real journey through words. I take this opportunity to congratulate all the wonderful souls who created this platform. It's my pleasure to guide through this wonderful sessions, especially writers from different parts of our nation. And I hope that it won't be, it will really become a cliffhanger because more such sessions should, continue as a process. And I'm very sure that the organizers are much interested in continuing this process. I take this opportunity to thank all the wonderful panelists, the writers. I give the names: Sabin Iqbal, Abdullah Khan, Keshava Guha, and Sidhartha Banerjee, sir, for all wonderful things that you've done for this past 3 hours. And the designer for this publication, Vinod T. I wholeheartedly thank Vinod T for the design. Dr. Beena ma'am, the principal of MMNSS College, Kutiam, participation is a blessing for this occasion. And many reward teachers, P. Harisa, Madhusa, all the dignitaries and also the participants for the nice presence over here.